Senator Tim Kaine. Senator, you heard from the Transportation Secretary, Sean Duffy, just a few minutes ago. Any reaction to anything he said?
Well, you know, like Sean, thoughts and just deep sadness for the families, incredible appreciation for all these first responders, state, local, federal, many agencies working together. But this incident just raises tons of questions, and we have to get to the bottom of them. It was very apparent to me over the years, but particularly when we debated this bill in Congress last spring, that the last thing we should be doing is forcing more flights into what is the most congested and complicated airspace in the country. And I urged my colleagues to avoid it. I was not successful in convincing them. But we got to get to the bottom of this crash and then take necessary steps to keep people safe.
On Friday, President Trump talked about the investigation into the crash. Take a listen.
Mr. President, on the crash, do you have any concerns that your commentary about things you have described as common sense or your observations could in any way interfere with the thorough investigation of the crash?
No, I think they'll do an investigation. It'll probably come out the way I said it. I was right on all of it, but they'll still do an investigation just to check it out.
Are you confident that the NTSB and the FAA will get to the bottom of what caused this crash, free from any political interference?
Jake, I am, but I got to say, the president weighing in while bodies were still being recovered, blaming this on DEI, and when pressed, he has no evidence to suggest it, was absolutely stomach-turning. And I'll tell you, I had a suspicion about why he did that. Why race bait at a moment like this? I think the president didn't want to be asked tough questions like, why did you let Elon Musk force the FAA administrator to resign? When this crash happened, there was no FAA administrator because he had clashed with Elon Musk. Why did you scrap an aviation safety advisory committee within DHS on the second day of your presidency, saying that it wasn't related to national security? Oh, air safety is not related to national security? Why did you issue a buyout offer to include air traffic controllers when we're already short of air traffic controllers? I think the president was nervous that he was going to be asked questions about his own administration's policies that were de-emphasizing air safety, and so he decided to have everybody chase down a rabbit hole of his DEI allegations with no evidence. But I do believe the NTSB will get to the bottom of it. I have a feeling I know some of the things they will find. I'm confident that they'll give us answers, and then that Congress and the administration together have to provide solutions following their recommendations.
Let's talk about Trump's new tariffs on Mexico, Canada, and China. Mr. Trump was very clear during the campaign he was going to do this. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt says, quote, promises made, promises kept, unquote. Isn't she right? Isn't this what the American people voted for, this trade war?
Sadly, you know, Jake, I think the American people did. Virginians didn't. Virginians overwhelmingly rejected the Trump candidacy for the third time in a row. And I think one of the reasons they did is they saw the effect of tariffs during the Trump first term. When President Trump put tariffs on Canada and the EU and Mexico, what happened? It was a tax on Virginia consumers. Prices went up, and then when those nations retaliated, they retaliated against critical Virginia industry sectors, especially agriculture and forestry. I remember going out during the Trump first term to talk to my farmers and foresters, who by and large were Trump supporters, and they were saying, for God's sake, Senator, help us. This is hurting our businesses. So look, here's what Americans are going to see. Higher prices for energy, higher prices for groceries. That's what they're going to see. Businesses are going to get hurt when the retaliatory tariffs tick in. And I'm struck by the irony of last week the president signed an emergency order regarding energy. There's an energy emergency. And he just put a 10% tariff on energy from Canada. He is increasing prices at the pump, and you'll start to see it within the next couple of days. At the same time, he's saying there's an energy emergency. The emergency is self-created.
You alluded to Elon Musk having a conflict with the former head of the FAA, and that former head of the FAA handing in his resignation around the inaugural. I believe that they clashed not on anything having to do with DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency that Musk's in charge of, but rather having to do with SpaceX, his private company, and disagreeing with a FAA. We learned this weekend that Elon Musk's team at Doge have gained access to the federal payment system at the U.S. Treasury Department, and there are more reports of sweeping powers being taken by that team. Do you know the full extent of Elon Musk's role in the government, and do you think there should be more transparency as to what exactly they're doing?
Jake, there needs to be more transparency. And no, I don't know the full extent because the administration isn't telling us virtually anything. So, for example, when they did the pause on grant funding, federal spending earlier in the week, they didn't give Democratic senators a heads up about it, and I guess they probably didn't give Republican senators either. So we learned about it when we started to get calls in our office from veterans who could not access the portal at the VA to set up medical appointments, to Head Start agencies who weren't sure they could pay their teachers come Friday, to universities whose research projects were being threatened, to organizations that were working on refugee resettlement that suddenly couldn't get the phone answered when they called federal agencies. We've been having to assemble this like a jigsaw puzzle to see the extent of what the Musk activities have been, and we need to push back and we need to get information. So I'm encouraging any Virginian who's been affected by these things to let us know, because the administration isn't telling us and they're not telling the American public, but we're learning about it from our citizens.
The Democratic National Committee picked a new head over the weekend on the matter of the Democratic Party. We saw some stark numbers this week about how the American people view the Democratic Party. You see there, this is a Quinnipiac poll, 57% of the American people have an unfavorable view of the Democratic Party, only 31% favorable. This is the worst number for the Democratic Party since Quinnipiac University began asking the question, and it's not an outlier. A recent CNN poll found a 33-year low favorable rating with the Democratic Party. Why is your party so staggeringly unpopular with the public?
Jake, you know me, I'm a Virginian. I know one state well and not so well the other 49. In Virginia, we've gone from one of the most ruby red states in the country to now having put electoral votes behind Democrats 5 elections in a row. I just won my re-election by a sizable margin against Donald Trump's hand-picked Republican opponent. And I'll tell you how we've done it. We focus on the economy. This is what we do in Virginia, and I think sometimes national Democrats don't. We focus on competent government and running the economy in a great way that focuses on innovation and advancing. We have what we call a make, build, grow agenda. While the Republicans are talking about cutting taxes and cutting regulation, and most people understand that tax cutting is just for the wealthiest, on the Democratic side in Virginia, and I think we can do this nationally, we talk about make, build, grow. We want to make it here, we want to build it here, and in ag and forestry, we want to grow it here. And the Dems have the results to back it up. It's just that so often Democratic candidates don't emphasize that. And so, yeah, the American public looks at standard campaigns. They don't see Democrats advertising on the economy, which is their principal concern, and so they have wonders about us. Let's return to the bread and butter basics that people want to really focus on, and I think the Democrats can do well, especially when Donald Trump's tariffs are driving up their prices every day.
Well, I don't want to get too in the weeds of Virginia politics, but your governor is a Republican, and he beat handily a former Democratic governor when he ran for that position.
By 1.8%. The last 2 Republicans that won the governorship in Virginia won by comfortable double digits. Our governor is a Republican. He ran during a very good year to be a Republican, and he won barely. We have a governor's race this year in Virginia. We feel really, really good about our chances. We just took both houses of the state legislature. We got a great candidate for governor. I think the governor's race in Virginia in November 2025 will be the first bellwether test of a Democratic comeback, and I'm feeling really, really good about that right now.
All right, Governor Tim Kaine of the great